So we've looked at a lot of the tricks that the Black Templars have to offer with their new codex in Faith and Fury. So let's put it all together on the tabletop and see what nasty tricks we can employ in an example army list. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel, where we're all about getting the best out of our models on the tabletop. Today's Black Templar list that we're looking at is going to be a bit more of a competitive focused one. I've tried to include some of my favourite tricks from the new codex to help win games against tough opponents. This isn't going for quite as much a fluffy Black Templar feel, where I think we'd want some more Land Raider Crusaders and the Crusader squads. But for this first attempt, I thought we'd take a look at some of the actual tactical synergies on the tabletop. If you will be interested in a more fluffy Black Templars list review, please let me know down in the comments, and I'm sure that can happen at some point. But without further ado, let's take a look at my example list. So first of all, the list is arranged into 2 battalions to give us plenty of command points, as we have some very decent melee stratagems at our disposal, and particularly we want to be making the most out of Tenacious Assault with this army list. So the list really has 3 main parts. Firstly, a central castle, where a bunch of characters will hang out and support some very shooty repulsor executioners, some boots on the ground infantry for objective scoring and screening purposes, and 3 decently sized melee murder units that are going to be trying to jump in, hit the enemy hard in close combat, and then potentially stop them from falling back with that Tenacious Assault stratagem. So let's talk about the central castle first. Our 2 big units are 2 repulsor executioners. They'll generally be deployed pretty much front and centre in our army, next to our 4 HQ choices, to benefit from all of their powerful abilities. The repulsor executioners will move forward with the characters, screening them from fire, and then the characters will jump out to support the melee units that come down in turn 2 or turn 3 as needed. So we have 4 supporting HQs for our repulsor executioners. Firstly, the Emperor's Champion. He's mainly there because he is just an incredibly points efficient melee monster, but I've also chosen to give him the relic, the Aurelian Shroud. This is a once per game use of giving units within 3 inches of him a 4+ invul save. So basically he'll make sure he's within 3 inches of both of the repulsor executioners on turn 1, and then that'll significantly hamper any nasty enemy shooting that tries to down them before they get to fire. Next we have Chaplain Grimaldus, who will be using the Black Templar specific litanies. He'll be taking the one that has a 5+ feel no pain, and he'll be putting it on whichever repulsor executioner is most likely to be the brunt of enemy fire this turn. I'd be tempted to put one slightly in front of the other, so it's a more viable target with more enemy units that are in range of it, and then punish them for choosing that one by giving them the 5+ feel no pain. Between that and a 4-up invul save turn 1, it's safe to say that that particular repulsor executioner isn't going anywhere. He also has the +1 attack litany, which when the blob moves forwards and he jumps out to support the descending assault units, he'll be trying to cast that to add an extra layer of buffing to our big melee units that are coming in. Next up we have the Captain with the Crusader Helm, Imperium Sword, Power Fist and a Storm Shield. So he's going to be our warlord for the battle, and I'd be thinking about upgrading him to a Chapter Master for 2 of our command points, particularly as his aura will be so large. He'll be making those repulsor executioners ridiculously accurate, and as he moves up, they might well get shot down, but then he'll be jumping forward to help give the descending melee units that same very nasty Chapter Master reroll. He's also no slouch in close combat himself, and could be a very powerful melee counter-attack unit with the Emperor's Champion, as he'll be strength 10 on the charge, with an additional attack because of Imperium's Sword. He can also put a unit into Assault Doctrine with that Crusader Helm, so when he is supporting the descending assault units, we can have them activating the Black Templars' unique combat doctrine for an extra pip of AP and more attacks on 6s. I didn't mark it on here, but he will also be taking a jump pack. Next we have a Chaplain with a jump pack as well. We'll be using the new Faith and Fury Master of Sanctity rules to allow him to take and recite 2 litanies, and he'll be using the +1 to hit litany, which he'll be first using on the repulsors, and then when he jumps forward to help the melee unit, he'll be putting +1 to hit on them in later rounds. He'll also be supporting them as they come down with that all-important +2 inches to charge, so when they come down, they'll be needing a 7-inch charge, and they'll get their full Black Templar rerolls, so very, very reliable charges indeed. He's also super reliable with getting off these litanies, because he's taking the Ancient Breviary relic, which will allow him to roll 2d6 and pick whichever one he wants for each litany. So he should pretty much get both of those ones off every turn, and be a very good buffing character. So we have a whole load of very scary buffing characters there. All of those litanies will be super powerful when applied to the big units, either the Repulsors or the Vanguard Vets or the Tartarus Terminators, who will be further stacked with full rerolls to hit from the Chapter Master, and the Repulsors will be hard to shift with that Aurelian Shroud first turn. So let's move on to the support units. Firstly, we've got a big unit of 10 scouts with close combat weapons. I didn't mark it on here, but I'd also be giving the Scout Sergeant a Thunderhammer. These guys will be deploying aggressively if we know we have first turn, and they'd certainly be thinking about making a big first turn charge, chewing up a bunch of the enemy screen, and if they pile into anything that would want to fall back, then they'll be very tempted to use Tenacious Assault to keep the enemy in close combat, give them a further turn of clawing down the enemies, and maybe stopping important shooter units from being able to fall back and fire as they'd ideally like to. They're quite cheap at only 126 points for that unit with the Thunderhammer, and that's not too bad for 27 chainsaw attacks and a few Thunderhammer attacks too. We also have another 2 units of 5 scouts. These guys would sit on objectives in the midfield, or potentially be used as a screen for the Repulsor Executioners if there's any enemy reserves coming down that we don't want to get a charge off on them. And supporting in the backfield, we have 3 units of 5 Intercessors with bolt rifles. These will just be sitting back on objectives for the most part in cover, plinking off a bunch of shots on hordes, but if the situation demanded it, I could certainly move them up with the buff bubble, getting even more accurate shots and potentially getting mixed up in close combat. They're quite versatile depending on what sort of game you want to play with them. And now finally we come to our 2 hammer units. Firstly, we have 8 Tartarus Terminators with chain fists, as we talked about in the Terminators review videos. I really like the Tartarus variant because every single model can take a Power Fist or Chain Fist, including the Sergeant, and that really ups their damage potential. They synergize very well with the Black Templars because they have the 4 rerolls to charge, which will help them get into close combat after they've dropped in and shot a lot of Stormbolter fire everywhere. And they should be very reliable getting in with that plus 2-inch to charge, which will be putting them in from the Chaplain. We also have a unit of 10 Vanguard Veterans, all with Storm Shields, and 4 of them have Thunderhammers. They'll be used in a very, very similar way. The main reason I wanted Vanguard Veterans instead of more Terminators is that, say, if the enemy only has a bunch of units that have the Flyer keyword, we want a unit that can really jump in and smash a Flyer or 2 to bits, and not have to worry about not being able to charge. Both of these units are units that I'd be strongly considering using stratagems on. I keep on talking about Tenacious Assault. It really is incredibly powerful for this army. Basically, if you have the Tartarus Terminators, drop down outside of 9 inches, we'll assume the opponent has screened well. We don't have any really big targets to charge, but we have to charge some screening infantry. The ideal would be to drop in, charge 1 unit of screening infantry, absolutely murder them with chain fists, and then pile into another unit of screening infantry. We have a stratagem for a 6-inch pile-in if we really need it, but hopefully we would be able to just do it with positioning. The other unit of screens won't really do much to them in return because they're in Terminator armour, and then we use the Tenacious Assault stratagem to prevent that unit from falling back. This means that the enemy can't shoot any of their guns at the Terminators that are very close to their lines now, because they're still locked in combat with their own infantry squad. In their turn, hopefully we kill that other unit of screening infantry, because we can focus all of our units' attacks on them now. And that means in our turn, we're free to fire off those Stormbolters again and charge our next target. The principle works exactly the same with the Vanguard Veterans as well. We also have other options. If we could just charge enemy heavy hitters, we can drop in and potentially fight twice with Honour the Chapter. That could be absolutely brutal if you combine that with the Chapter Master rerolls, maybe +1 attack from Grimoldus, perhaps the Black Templars Assault Doctrine from the Captain with the Crusader Helm. We'll be getting a lot of incredibly high quality attacks, and we could wipe out a sizable part of an army with just 1 massive charge. I feel like we only really want to do this with a couple of big hammer units though, because we really want to be using those key stratagems on them, and we can't go using it on every single unit because we'll both run out of command points and you can only use each stratagem once per turn. That's why I think that they're a fairly good pair with some really quality range shooting, such as the repulsors, because they can certainly go about addressing some threats that the assault units just won't be able to get to, due to screening units being in the way. I think this list does have some weaknesses. Firstly, an army with massive overwatch could be a real problem. We don't have a way of mitigating overwatch besides doing some clever charges with captains from out of line of sight and such like that. So something like Tau would have a decent chance of blowing away a lot of our assault units before they get to really hit. That could be a bit unfortunate, but if we do get a good charge off, then Tau are absolutely going to hate not being able to fall back with their drone units and just get hit by a lot of thunderhammers or chain fists in close combat repeatedly. So if you do catch them in a decent charge, it could be game over for them. Also, we don't have quite as much shooting as dedicated gunline lists. Those repulsors are exceptionally tough, but in a meta that gears up to gun down knights, if we did lose one of them straight away on turn 1, then it would be a big blow for the rest of the game. Hopefully not unrecoverable, but it wouldn't be a great start. I also think that any army with a massive amount of melee damage output could also be a problem. A lot of this army's tricks is in keeping units that don't want to be in close combat in close combat. So if the enemy has a massive countercharge threat that could just wipe out our Vanguard Vets or Tartarus Terminators, then that wouldn't be ideal either. Overall though, I think that this list showcases a lot of the nasty tricks that the Black Templars have to offer, and I think it will be very fun to play on the tabletop. Thanks for listening to another Auspex Tactics video. If you've got any improvements that you can see on this list, or spotted any rules errors that I've made during the making of the video, please let me know down in the comments. Feel free to subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this. I'll hope to see you guys in the next video.